I finally got my Wata graded games back, and I have to say this is the worst grading experience I've ever had in the last 2 years of getting back into this collectible space. Unfortunately, I can't use my card camera because these games are so big in the case that they don't even fit on screen, on the camera. I will explain why it was so terrible, but I wanted to give you a glimpse at the first game of 2 games that I'll be showing off in this video. The first game that I have is The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild for the Wii U. Now, there are 2 versions of this game. There are 2 controllers here. There is a version that I think is considered the first print of the game that actually has like 7 or 9 different controllers across the bottom. So the one that I have is actually the less like rare one. It's not the first print version of the game. So if you find them with all the controllers on the back, usually they'll be more expensive, but that is considered like the first print of Breath of the Wild on Wii U. And I decided to buy it back in the day because I wanted to try out Wata. I wanted to try out the graded game market. Breath of the Wild is widely considered as one of the greatest games of all time. I disagree with that, but it is by a lot of people considered one of the greatest games of all time. And I thought it was an interesting release because it came out for a short time on Wii U, and then because the Switch was out at the time that it released, it came out on the Switch shortly after that. Or maybe the Switch came out right after this game came out, and then it also released on the Switch. So it had probably a shorter release, I would say, on Wii U, because not a whole lot of people own the Wii U comparatively to the Switch release, which was like a launch game for the Switch. Now, I'll show you what grade it got. It got a 9.4 A+ seal. So 9.4, I think, is good. I honestly, it's one thing that I don't quite understand about grading sealed video games, right? Is they're not really grading anything to do with the actual game. They're grading the cellophane on the outside of the game, right? So whether or not the seal on the cellophane's good, whether or not there are any tears or dings or smudges or sticker, goop or anything on the outside. So it's not necessarily that they're grading the game, they're just grading what the game is wrapped in. You can actually grade games that aren't sealed, and in that case, I find it to be it makes a little more sense to me personally, because they're grading the condition of the outside of the box, they're grading the condition of the cart, and the condition of the manual. I think they grade everything in regards to like a CIB or complete in-box product. Now, why was this the worst grading experience ever? This was the worst grading experience ever because I submitted these games into Wata at the speedrun tier, which I think I ended up spending like $105 in shipping, in like a cleaning fee essentially, and then for the actual grading process, which I think was like $80 some. Now, that is the second highest tier. They have 3 different tiers. I think there's one higher than that, and then like their bulk or like economy tier, which is lower than that. And at the time that I submitted, it was a 45 business day turnaround. So 45 business days, that's what? Maybe 2 months, 2.5 months if you're just looking at purely business days and not weekends. It took 10 months to get these games back. 10 months. You're probably asking, well, a lot of cards saw that too. A lot of bulk submissions for CGC took 7-8 months to come back. A lot of PSA submissions are still out there with over a year, and they haven't come back yet. So what makes this one the worst? What makes this one the worst is that I paid for a faster tier. I paid for a premium turnaround time. Every submission for CGC, even during the boom when everything was pushed back and everything was crazy, every submission that I paid up for, whether it was express or standard or anything above that bulk tier, I got back within a reasonable time frame of what was advertised as the turnaround time. On top of that, CGC and PSA both eventually, PSA just completely shut down to work on the backlog. CGC eventually updated their turnaround times to better reflect when you were going to get your cards back. Wata never updated. Never once updated their turnaround times. Every time you email them, you get like an autoresponder that tells you what the current turnaround times are. This has never moved from 45 business days. Never. Also, when you email them and ask like, hey, what's the status of my games? Why is it taking so long? All that stuff. There is this just generic nonsense copy paste email they send back to you. You really have to push. It might take 2 or 3 emails for them to tell you like what boxes or what games they're able to send out right now from like which week they were opened and put into the system. So the last little thing I have before I show you the second game that I mentioned is that at some point I did email them and they said basically that they didn't have any DVD style cases. Like it was essentially a shortage of the DVD sized cases, these size cases, right? And for me at the time, I know that there was like a plastic shortage that was happening with COVID and everything like that. I understood that, but at the same time, like we wouldn't accept if KFC ran out of chicken. Like if it's the only thing that you do at your company is grade stuff and put them in sealed plastic cases, you would think that you would have a pretty big stock and excess of plastic cases for this specific reason. Like you would think that they just have warehouses and warehouses and warehouses packed with these freaking things, because this is the only thing that you provide is these cases with a game inside. So the fact that they ran out of DVD style cases or had a large shortage in them, I kind of hold that against them a little bit. I know that maybe that's unfair, but I do hold that against them because it is your one thing that you provide to a customer is this case. It's different styles of these cases. So let me show you the next game. The next game I got is The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Yeah, so, but this one got a 9.6 A+. Again, if you look at these, and I looked at these pretty thoroughly when I submitted them, but if you actually look at them, I have zero clue why one got a 9.4 and one got a 9.6. I have no idea. I do have to say, I gotta give Wata some credit. These cases are insane. Like, they are so freaking nice. They're big and they're bulky, and that's one, thing that I kind of don't like about them, is they're so big. Like, imagine trying to store these. I have seen VGA cases, and they look a lot more sleek, a lot more just, like, clean, a bit more like CGC, for instance, with cards. Just sleek, clean, clear. But I do have to say that this is impressive. Like, I am not at all worried about the game, being damaged within this case. But yeah, overall, I have to say this was the worst grading experience. It took forever, and there was zero communication, zero updated turnaround times. There was absolutely nothing that they did during the last 10 months to let me know, like, about the delay, why the delay was happening, what the expected turnaround times were being increased to. Literally nothing. They did nothing to be transparent throughout the course of this entire thing to let me know that these were going to be significantly delayed. They have been graded. I would say they've been graded for probably like the last 6 months. They've been graded. And they just haven't been sent back. And I have to only assume that's because they had that case shortage. Last thing I'll say is I'm very excited that CGC is going to be trying out grading games. I think if anything in the future, I will be using CGC. I will not be using Wata. I appreciate Wata for the cases. I think the cases are legit. They're freaking massive. But this last experience with them has been complete bullshit. I think their company is a joke, the way that they've run the last 10 months. Them just like all of a sudden appearing on Twitter again, because apparently they just stopped posting on socials for the longest time. And in the last month, they've just appeared on Twitter and acted like nothing ever happened. And I think it's just been a complete joke. Their response and the way that they have handled this has been so incredibly poor. These two games will be for sale on my eBay. If you're interested, definitely check out via the link below. And yeah, we'll see you on the next video. Bye-bye.